Well, let me ask you one question as a follow-up. It seems to me every Republican that goes on Meet the Press lately is asked, where will you cut? They say nothing. They will not mention any cuts. No, I've had Congressman Pence on who won't say any cuts. So you won't cut, you won't raise taxes and you won't cut spending. So in other words, all this bitching about the deficit doesn't mean squat because you won't do either raise taxes or cut spending. Neither one.
This year, Congress isn't even doing a budget, but last year when we did a budget, I brought a budget to the floor that specifically cut $4.8 trillion of spending out of the budget and paid for all of these tax cuts and debt reduction. 2 months ago, we put out $1.3 trillion in very specifically listed and enumerated spending cuts. So I can go with you on cuts. I can show you all the kinds of cuts.
But that's 1/300th of the deficit. That's 0.3 of 1% you've talked about.
$4.8 trillion is not 0.3 of 1%
okay,
of the deficit.
4.8 trillion, okay.
And 1.3 trillion is not peanuts. It's nothing to sneeze at.
Okay, let me go.
Two things.
I just don't see any program. You talk it in general terms, but let me tell you this. The major Republicans that come on television will not cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They won't cut the military. They can't cut debt servicing. They won't get rid of a major cost of government. They'll talk about, let's freeze discretionary spending or discretionary and domestic in some sort of generalized way, but they won't get rid of any government. They seem to like government. In fact, they love to talk against it.
Go to AmericanRoadmap.org and you will see a very comprehensive piece of legislation that the CBO has scored as actually paying off the debt with very specific reforms to the entitlements you mentioned.
Name a major piece of the 1.4 to 1.7 trillion. Just take a chunk out of that 1.4 by getting rid of a big program, good expenditure that the people now watching can understand.
I would rescind the unspent stimulus funds. I would rescind all the TARP funds that aren't spending. I would do a federal hiring freeze and pay freeze for the rest of the year. And I would go back and cut discretionary spending back to 2008 levels and freeze that spending going forward. Now, you and I can get a debate about Keynesian economics, whether it worked or didn't. I don't think it did. We increased domestic discretionary last year by 84%. I don't think we should continue to build that kind of a base. Let's go back and cut discretionary spending back to 2008 levels, rescind stimulus, rescind TARP, and do a federal hiring and pay freeze.